Hey, what's going on? This is Louis Angel right here with AE Mind. And check this out. I have a very special treat for you guys here today. I'm going to be interviewing the co-star of the show, Supernatural. He plays an angel named Castiel on that show. Not only that, but he's been on several different shows, right? ER is one of them. That you've been on 24, I believe you were on
Yep.
24 as well. And now Supernatural, which
Uh,
you've been on for several years. So what helped you make that transition?
I when I was in DC, I did start doing a little bit of acting, but um, I think that I'd grown up always thinking that I was going to go into politics, and there was something about my experience at the White House. Maybe it was that I just didn't like database entry. I'm not sure, but I wasn't crazy about DC, and there was something about the environment being in the White House that made me think, I don't know if this is right for me. I don't know if this is the right path. And so I decided to sort of take to course correct and reevaluate. And I thought, well, maybe what I could do is I could get this is such a it's a little embarrassing to reveal this, but I thought maybe what I can do is I can get famous, and then I can use my fame to be influential instead of going through the political channels to do that. And so that is why I went into acting. It wasn't because at the time I had any particular passion or knack for acting, but it was just because I had this sort of long-term strategy of becoming famous enough that I could be influential. And I thought that I gave myself a 5 year time limit. Like if this hasn't worked out in 5 years, which I was very confident for some reason that it would, then I'll do something different. And needless to say, like 5 years later, I think I had guest starred on Charmed and had a cameo here and there. Like I had no measurable success at that point, but I ended up sticking with it, and I did end up through the process. I ended up gaining an affection for acting and everything that goes into that, and feeling increasingly gratified by that. But yeah, that was my long term strategy.
And then and now looking back at it, it's like look at what we talked about in the beginning, the random acts, Gishwhes. Like you did take that fame, and you're doing good for the world now because of that. So
Yeah, maybe maybe my
that's awesome.
maybe my strategy worked. I don't know.
It did.
Yeah.
So now I have a friend of mine. His name is Nick Marino. He's a student actor. He goes to University of Central Florida, and he wrote down like an essay of questions to ask you. I don't think I'll
Okay.
be able to ask all of them, so I'm gonna try to summarize all of them into just one big question.
Okay. Big question.
So essentially, he just wants to know, like, obviously, school is important. For certain things that you may or may not want to do, right? So one of his things is like, hey, should I just drop out and move to LA and just pursue acting 24/7, or should I stay here? And also, like, what other tips would you recommend for someone, not only just for Nick, but someone that's starting off in the industry or has aspirations to become famous, right? And get into Hollywood and get into acting and TV shows, movies, all that sort of stuff. What types of tips would you recommend for them to start doing right now to get them moving towards that direction?
It's funny when I was recently back in LA with my oldest friend who also moved to LA with me back in 1999, and we were both at the same sort of point where we were like trying to get an agent, trying to get an acting job, and that sort of stuff. And we were reflecting on that experience and how awful it is in hindsight, and how blind we were to that situation at the time. We were like, "This is great. We're on track." And now thinking back to the stuff that we were subjecting ourselves to and how difficult it was, I cannot believe how much work goes into it. It is truly not an easy path. There are people like one of the stars of Supernatural, Jared. He was like walking in a mall one day, and somebody was like, "Hey, you look good. You want to be a model or an actor?" And that's it. He
Wow.
came to LA. I think he got his first audition, turned out to be Gilmore Girls, and he worked on that for years. And he's never not worked. So it does happen. but you have to be 6'4" and dashingly good looking for that kind of luck to lightning to strike. Um, but with acting, uh, I think school is helpful. It is definitely not necessary. The biggest asset that you can have breaking into the business often is actually youth, and youth at times trumps school. Um, Nothing is more valuable than credits. So if you have worked on something before, it's very valuable, more valuable than having gone to school. Going to acting school and I guess I should clarify that this is not, I'm not speaking to the New York theater scene or regional theater or anything like that. I'm just speaking about Los Angeles, because that's all I know. But the having legitimate credits on TV shows and things like that is gold. Um, Unless you attend a top school like Tisch School for the Arts at NYU for an MFA, or Yale, or something like that, the anything else is not that impressive to LA casting directors or agents. They really don't care. So unless you feel like you're really gaining something personally and you're developing tools that you really feel you need, then unless you're at one of those top schools, it might not translate into something that is actually going to get doors open for you in LA. One of the pieces of practical advice that I can give is, right now there's all these tax credits for film and television production. So if you shoot in Louisiana or New Mexico, actually New Mexico's just went away, I think. But if you shoot in Louisiana or North Carolina or South Carolina or Texas, there's all these places where the local governments will give you your production tremendous tax credits. So tons of productions are shooting outside of Los Angeles. What that means practically is that there's these productions that are showing up, in Wilmington and North Carolina, and there's not a big pool of actors there, but there's a lot of production going on, which means there's a lot of available roles for local actors, because a production can save a lot of money if they hire somebody locally. So they're inclined, if they can, to cast locally. And what that means is there's a real golden opportunity if you go places where there's production happening that is not Los Angeles. I would say do not come to Los Angeles to start. Los Angeles has 50,000. Oh, now I've forgotten the number. I think it's 100,000.
Yeah.
There's 100,000 union members, and of those, only about 2,500 are working
Wow.
consistently. So, and there's another hundred and something thousand people who are non-union who are trying to get union. So now you're competing against literally hundreds of thousands of people who are trying to go for actually a very few number of jobs that are shooting in LA, and you're just setting yourself up for incredibly challenging odds. So what I would suggest is starting in a secondary market. I actually did it in DC. I started in DC, so I got a couple of studio film credits in Washington DC, which is actually at the time it was actually relatively easy, because they were tiny. There was like a couple of lines, but it goes a really long way to have a major motion picture on your resume that you can go to LA and give to casting directors and agents. So start not in LA, not in New York. Start in a secondary market, and pound the pavement and be unbelievably persistent. I literally have gone on thousands of auditions, and I never gave up. And I mean, this is very trite, but it's very true. You have to find a way to fall in love with the process and not the product. If you go into the arts and are chasing some sort of goal, some sort of achievement, like I want to get a role in a production, or I want to have my work in a gallery, and you're single mindedly focused on that, you're not going to succeed, because it takes such a long time to get to that point that you have to satisfy yourself along the way with the process that gets you there. You have to love painting, and you have to be satisfied in your studio painting every day in order to ever get good enough to get your stuff in a gallery. And likewise, you have to love acting, and you have to love the process of going on auditions, which I grew to love. I got myself to a point where I was like, don't I don't care if I get this part because I'm enjoying coming to do this audition. And you have to get into that frame of mind. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to deal with all of the rejection that inevitably is coming your way. Um, and then, you have to also work harder than everybody else. That's another thing. You have to know, you have to rehearse for your audition for hours and hours and hours as much as you possibly can because a lot of other people are going to be lazy and that's going to give you the leg up. You have to work harder than other people if you want to be successful. You can't be lazy about it. Um, yeah, I don't know. I could go on and on, but I'll stop.
No, those are great tips. That's great advice for, not only just individuals trying to get into the business, but just in any field at all. You can apply that advice to, say, somebody trying to go out and
Yeah.
book speeches, right? For myself, I'm trying to go out and book more speeches so I can go out and spread the message of memory improvement. And it takes a lot of that, just a lot of rejection. Like for me, it's cold calling. I have to call a lot of companies and a lot of schools to try to get in the door, and a lot of them are saying, "Oh, it sounds interesting, but just not right now.
Mhm.
Call me back in a few months." So you get a lot of rejection right off the bat. And it's so true. I fell in love with the process of just calling people because it's not just me trying to get the gig, but I'm just having a conversation with somebody. If they say yes, cool. If not, I've had companies call me like months later saying, "Hey, we have an opening now. Come and do your talk at our company event next month," right? So it's just more like you said, fall in love with the process, and do it every single second that you possibly can. Practice, 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 because that's gonna help you out tremendously.